All right, rounding things off tonight, NAIA had some pretty prominent coaching changes here. I called it the coaching carousel earlier. That might be a little bit dramatic, but we're going to talk about four of the new men at the helm for these NAIA programs. And by we, I mean me and the man, Matt. What's up, brother? How you doing?
What's up, dude? I'm just trying to survive without football. Don't know how we're doing it, if I'm being completely honest. It's
Yeah, that's gonna be a challenge in the content end as well. Here comes the offseason, and you see all these big time accounts posting who has the best arm sleeve in college football, and you're like,
oh
okay,
god.
slow
The
content
stadium,
day
dude, the stadium discourse of the offseason, I can't do it. I can't
every
do it.
year too.
Every year, I can't do it.
Let's make a poll. Yeah, let's do it. Yep, I hear you, but we're not quite dipping to the depths of that low in the barrel yet. We'll talk about
Not
some
yet.
coaching changes while we do still have at least some content to talk about. And we'll start with Louisiana Christian, man, bringing in Coach McLaughlin. What have you, I guess, first impressions with that hire and kind of that program?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting turn of events for Louisiana Christian, obviously coming off of one of their best seasons probably
Absolutely.
ever, like in recent memory for sure. And obviously the guy at the helm of that, taking a new job, moving up, going to SEMO is I think where their former head coach
Yep.
ended up going to. But Ben McLaughlin, obviously a guy that's been around this program before. I think what's interesting to note too, and we'll talk about this kind of with some of the other coaching hires as we go down this list. I always think the coaching carousel at this level is fascinating because it's not quite D1 level to where high school coaches are in the mix, former players are in the mix, like even upper level assistants will sometimes
There's a lot of
take a step
parity.
back and take a
Yeah.
job. There's a lot of parity in how these work out. I think what's cool about that is that it's, the coaching carousel is super, super exciting, but also there's not a lot of clarity with a lot of this, which I think is the frustrating part. But I think you get a guy like Ben in for this Louisiana Christian program that is on a very positive upward trajectory right now. Guy who's been around the system before, a guy who knows some of these guys. And granted, he was coaching high school for a bit, obviously getting his feet under him as a head guy. But coming back to the program that you kind of help build into this monster you got going on now, like I think that's a good thing for this team.
Totally. And a guy who, played here, graduated from here, was a dude, right? Had a lot
Mm-hmm.
of great accolades and
Absolutely.
things of that nature. Stuck around as a running back coach, ends up leaving and then coming back, which I think is a cool progression because when you get exposure to different programs, different cultures, and that kind of deal, whether it is at the college level, like over at Northeastern Oklahoma A&M and that piece, or the high school level, whatever that is, and seeing all the different aspects of the game certainly molds a guy's coaching style. So for him to be back, I'm sure is a really exciting piece for him. It must have just been, the right time for him to take this larger responsibility because he's, like you said, he's been back for a while. He's been
Mm-hmm.
involved with this program and has been a big piece of that upward trajectory. So it seems like a no-brainer when your team is doing this on the uptick that you keep it going, keep the hire internal, and presumably keep that success going, and you're not going to see any kind of hopefully too much turmoil or turnover after a hire like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great hire. I think that they got a lot of good things going for him. And this is a guy that can steer your momentum. While it might be a different direction, it's still kind of on the path that was formed before, if that makes sense. I don't know if that sounds like Shakespearean or whatever.
Yeah.
But like you can bring something new to the table while still being able to build on what you know, and it's a good
Yeah.
combo to have. So
Yeah. I think it was the first time though that I like reading through the bio and some things like coached here, left, coached here, left,
yeah.
guess who's back? And very
Mhm.
interesting, similar situation happening right now with Pittsburgh State, with a coach Anthony, who a great example of someone who actually got out of the coaching profession for a year, was part of Pitt State staff, left coaching entirely to go work in the business sector, and then when their head coach was poached by Northern Arizona, he comes in and ends up getting the job, and that was kind of something I think was eye-opening for a lot of people that they believe he could come back in, and again, keep this thing kind of going right where it was, even though he wasn't a part of the team this last year. Different circumstances, still interesting to see that connection, and I'm obviously what that means for these programs to have their guys. But yeah, this Louisiana Christian squad, they've got a tough one to open up next year too, which will be a great test for them against St. Thomas, which is going to be an exciting matchup if St. Thomas is at all what we're expecting them to be. And this
Mhm.
last year, 9-2. You know, you have a couple really competitive ones. You lose against a Baker team that was, you know, pretty highly touted. And that's an interesting story, too, in the fact that you talk about the parity in NAIA coaching and the trees and those kind of things. The prior Baker head coach goes to be, I believe it was a senior defensive analyst at, was it Mississippi State? And now he's going to UConn.
Yeah.
So like that, like, I guess technically on paper is a jump, question mark. Like it's very odd, like having the ability to like own your own program and have like be the head guy versus going to work for a national power and NAIA.
Yeah. No, it's definitely interesting. It's like it's the Wild West out here, man. I always say it. And like the coaching carousel, it's always funny because usually these programs will make like a good hire or a hire that makes sense for them. But then like, you know, on the outside, it's like, who is this guy from, you know, like middle of nowhere high school coming to coach our program? I don't know. It's just,
no,
it's
I get that. I get that 100%. Another guy who's coming from the high school ranks is Scott Merchant over at Lawrence Tech. And they're basically clean slated the whole deal as far as their brand new staff that they've brought in. I had a chance to get to know actually the previous two head coaches and Coach Duvendek and Coach Mitchell over there. Went on an official visit there and a couple others while I was coming out of high school and had good relationships with both of those guys. They've both moved on to different gigs. Coach Mitchell has a new head coaching position, I believe, at it might be Olivet Nazarene. I don't want to misquote that. There you go. And a lot of shuffling going on. Coach Merchant, a hell of a lot of success in Michigan high school football, especially when it comes to state championships and other kinds of deals. He has led a lot of really prominent teams over there at Chip Valley, and this seems like an interesting hire, albeit I think, you know, they obviously are very confident in it, and it should be a good hire for them. He's a guy that knows how to lead, that making that jump from the high school to the college level is always one that, you know, can be challenging for these guys, but it's not like he doesn't have any experience. So I don't know, talk about this and your first impressions on this one.
Yeah, Lawrence Tech is always, they're kind of in an interesting spot. They're a program in the past few years that can't really get their feet under them.
Yes.
They had a decent season in 2021, obviously, with like 7 or 8 wins, which is really good for what they usually put up, but you know, kind of going back to back 3 to 4 win seasons and all this other, and they play in a ridiculous conference too, not to mention like the competition for them is fierce. So obviously it's a harder place to succeed, even in terms of NAIA standards. But I think Merchant, with what he's got going on, the experience he has, at least running a program, albeit not a college one, but you know, working with similarly aged kids, obviously with your younger recruits, it's similar enough. And bringing in, you know, also the experience of being a national champion in the 90s and all this other stuff when he was at D3, you know. So it's there's a lot of good things going into it. I'm curious to see how it goes because obviously clean slate for Lawrence Tech. In this scenario, they get to bring in, you know, a bunch of different guys. I'm sure that they're going to bring in, you know, Merchant's going to bring in his own staff too, to some extent, whether it's, you know, analysts or assistants or whatever. But yeah, it's this is what I'm gonna have my eyes on because I think Lawrence Tech is in an interesting area where they get a lot of talent. Like they're always kind of capable. I just haven't seen them take that next step recently. So it'll be interesting to see if a new coat of paint can get it done for them.
I like that. Yes. No, the vision is definitely there for Lawrence Tech and investing in a program. But for me, when I was going through that process, the main difference between a program like Lawrence Tech and a program like Indiana Wesleyan, per se, pretty comparable in terms of like where they're starting their program. Indiana Wesleyan had a lot of the pieces in place, right, to support a football team, to support a program and give them, yes, the facilities, but also just kind of the backing and all of the other structural and integral things that come with a football team. Those were ready to go and rolled out on day one. Lawrence Tech certainly has had the vision. It just is taken a lot more time to execute on some of the things that come off the field in terms of a football program. And I think that is not the sole reason, but definitely a reason that's contributed to their lack of success maybe in the last couple of years. You talk about those assistants that he's bringing in. One of them is my former head coach, Kyle Nystrom, the defensive coordinator down there. So that's a pretty cool piece. Glad to see him in that role because I always thought, you know, when it came to coaching ball, like he knows what he's doing. Like Coach Nystrom
Mhm.
is a like just classic old school ball coach. The dude, like that's what he wants to worry about. And I think him in the DC position is going to be great for him. We know more than anyone that the head football coach job now has more politics potentially than ever before. And you're juggling so many different things, wearing so many hats. So I think for Coach Nystrom to be in a position where he can call defense and develop these guys down there, he's going to do a great job with that. They've also brought in other pieces to that staff. And I did want to pivot on a little bit of a tangent here and talk about one of those teams in that conference, Concordia Ann Arbor. Have you been hearing any whispers or anything of the sort about the state of their program?
I've heard some whispers. I actually have a guy I know that plays baseball there.
Okay.
So I've heard the whispers. I don't have many facts, so I'll let you peel off the band.
And that's where things start to get a little gray, right? And we don't want to spit too much random conjecture. A little bit is always healthy, but they're facing financial problems. Is kind of the bottom line. And I've been told by people in the university that the bottom line, in layman's terms, is that either the football team shuts down or the school shuts down, and either way, football is not going to be a part of this university's future. Just about the entirety of the signing class going into that university this year, like the high schoolers, have all decommitted and are going elsewhere. And that's not a really good look because they've obviously been shared some information. And looking through trying to find some sources here, it says in an email sent out to Concordia students on Tuesday, their president, Eric Ankerberg, said that the university is spending more money than it's taking in. Well, there you go. That's usually how you get in debt.
That's
particularly on the Ann Arbor campus. They do also have a campus in Wisconsin that is involved with them. And it says here, changes must be made to operate within existing revenues. It says organizations in Ann Arbor must be reimagined and by next fall must significantly reduce operations to prioritize the university's mission. That is a very, very complicated way of saying we're spending too much money. We're going to have to cut back on some shit. We're probably cutting programs. We're probably cutting full-time staff in certain areas. None of it's good. Like, you hate to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a Concordia Ann Arbor team too, who has been very, very good
on fire
in recent memory. They were a team I was super high on, if you remember this past season. They are always phenomenal. It's unfortunate because honestly, this trend is not uncommon in the NAIA. We've seen it a lot recently, with Presentation College and North Star School. Oh, I mean, a lot of the North Star schools are shutting down, moving. We've obviously talked about realignment in that sense a little
Jamestown
bit in the
and
podcast before. And Jamestown's leaving, and there's all this, there's so many weird things going on at this level, especially because the NAIA mostly operates as like private schools.
Yes.
A good chunk of these schools are private. And I think with the funding, like I'm not a school financial expert, but I know it makes yeah, that's why I'm talking football in this podcast. I'll leave the dollars to somebody else.
Yep.
But it's always weird. It's always weird, and with different majors and different sports, and how I just saw, because Presentation was so close to Dakota Wesleyan when I was going there, I kind of had a front row seat to watch the entire implosion of that school.
Okay.
And it's not pretty. It was also weird because Dakota Wesleyan took in like most of their nursing program, which was also like, okay, that's weird.
Wow.
But just a bizarre thing to watch happen. And it's unfortunate that it keeps happening at a level of college football that is definitely, I don't want to say more pure, but closer to what people expect than what we're seeing at the bigger levels.
Yeah,
right
no, I can agree with that 100%. We went through something very similar up here with Finlandia University, the only Division III school up here in the Upper Peninsula, just about, say, an hour and a half north of us up in Hancock in Michigan. And they scrapped the whole deal. School went down, which obviously meant the football team went down, and we picked up a bunch of their guys as practice squad players for our squad here, which actually ended up, you could say, benefited us because we were at a point where everyone on our squad was jumping ship, and we just needed to fill roster numbers and get back up to whatever it is to field an actual football team. But it certainly don't want to make it seem like it would be any less bad if the team that was getting cut was dog shit or like not as good, but it does suck when you talk about a team that has had a really great amount of success, has done some quality things, and now out of their power, right? The powers that be, none of it's been finalized. We're just assuming that that Ann Arbor squad is not going to be taking the field this fall, which sucks. But we'll pivot. get on a little bit more of a positive note. Let's talk about your squad. Dakota Wesleyan didn't only get a new head coach, new with parentheses around, air quotes around that one. They just revamped the whole athletic department. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so this story actually starts with John Hart, who is now the athletic director at Sioux Falls. Obviously, he was
Yes.
at Dakota Wesleyan for years, and his dad was a former athletic director, very tied to this community. Obviously, with the Sioux Falls job, open it up, D2 school not too far, about 40 minutes east from Dakota Wesleyan. He pounces on that job.
Yep.
DWU promotes Ross Semple, who was the head football coach originally and has been for 12, 13 years now. Takes the interim position and then is offered the job. And, lo and behold, Ross Semple is your new athletic director at Dakota Wesleyan University. They also promoted the women's basketball coach, who will still be coaching to a step under that role, basically, in a new spot. And then Alex Kretschmar, who was the former wide receivers coach when I was a senior, offensive coordinator last season, is now the head football coach. I'm a big fan of Coach Kretsch, as we all affectionately call him.
Yep. I was going to let you do that name, by the way. I was not going to try and step in and take a jab at that one, so I'm glad you did. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Hey, I'm used to last names like that, so you already know I'm prepared for that. But yeah, Coach Kretsch is absolutely amazing. He's great with the players. I think he's in a position to succeed, and especially with Simple being the AD now, as a guy who has all of that head coaching experience, he knows what resources the football program is going to need to succeed. And not that John Hart didn't, but obviously, Simple was so in it for so many years. He has that direct tie to all of it. So, as a alum, as a former player, I'm pumped for this move, and I think even on the surface, this move just makes a lot of sense. And I'm really excited to see this Dakota Wesleyan program has been defined by what Coach Simple's built up over the past decade plus.
Yeah.
And who knows, he just turned 40. So obviously he's not super old. Who knows if he comes back to coaching, who knows, but in whatever capacity as of right now, he's helping Coach Kretsch along kind of as his boss here. So
yeah,
everybody moves up the totem pole a little bit. Everybody's happy. And I just think this is a good move. This makes a lot of sense. I'm happy about it. I got nothing but positive things to say about all these guys involved. So
hell yeah. But you talk about built on what Coach Simple has done, and that's even before D-Dub, right? You talk about over at Sioux Falls and the I guess dynasty, you could say, of sorts, and the amount of success that they've had there. And to have someone who's that familiar with the game and also winning at a high level with the game involved in any kind of admin position is a really important deal. Again, I'll draw on personal experience. I work right now with our athletic director up here at Northern Michigan, Rick Comley. The freaking ice rink is named after the dude because he won a national championship here with the hockey team. Whether you're coaching hockey or badminton, I don't care. If you win a national championship with that squad, you understand what it takes to make that next step in any kind of athletic profession or any kind of team or program in that role. So, again, no brainer. We're just here to talk about it, give him a little pat on the back, and keep it moving, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. I'll do that to Dakota Wesleyan all day. So go with me, man.
Let's talk about another squad that filling a pretty big hole, and that being Kaiser, right? We've talked on this show, and by we, I mean me, have talked a lot about Coach Socha moving up to Lenore Rhine and having Bobby Roman from Florida Memorial. I don't know if you tuned in any of that conversation, but he certainly was happy that he maybe doesn't have to see that man in the conference anymore. I got a couple of good sound bites out of him. Their new man over there, though, is Miles Russ. What were your first thoughts on this hire?
I absolutely love this promotion. This is a guy who's been around the program, been a prominent part of starting this program in the first place.
Yes.
Back in 2017, which I think is huge. Second head coach in program history, and it's not like much is really going to be changing for this squad, at least in terms of what they're able to do, probably how they go about things. Been around the offense long enough, is probably going to be keeping it at a similar pace. And he was the running backs coach who, if you remember, this Kaiser team was one of the best running college football teams I've ever seen in recent memory. They were that good. He's coached a lot of good guys. He clearly knows his X's and O's. And I think just being around this winning program, he was the recruiting coordinator. He knows how to set that up and get that rolling.
That's big.
It's big. And for a program that is coming off of a national title run, this is where you're setting yourself up to be a dynasty. This is the kind of hire that will define your program for years and years and years to come. And I think they nailed it, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Yeah, dude, I'm right along with you. You talk about a guy that's been there since day one and been a part of this program, bringing them up. You talk about 5 consecutive NAIA playoff appearances. Obviously, the last one this previous year, ending in the result that we all hope for in a national championship. And he said it himself that Coach Socha has been preparing him from day one of the program. Now is basically just a chance for him to put that experience into practice, is what he says. And a lot of his rhetoric was still around, like, you know, still wanting to learn and to lead this team, continue to defend the beach. Those were his words. And that's pretty cool. Defend the beach has got to be
defend the beach, dude.
Yeah,
like
you see, it's on the hashtag on the tweet that I pulled up here. I don't know why I haven't noticed that first, but defend the beach is pretty badass.
And look, man, how it can't be that hard to recruit to a place where you're literally on the beach. By the way,
right?
Point that out. Like.
I came with my official up here, and I kid you not, snowbanks on either side of the sidewalk that were up to like my abdomen. Thankfully, like, that doesn't bother me at all. But when you try and get anyone that's not from the Midwest to come play ball for the Cats, good luck.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, imagine being from the Midwest, going down on a visit to Kaiser, and you're, you know, sipping out of a coconut with your toes in the sand, and it's like. It's like April, you know?
You talk about the success of that Kaiser team. School record, which, again, these last couple of years, probably everything they've done has been a school record. So not to take that lightly, but put it into context a little bit where we're at with this program. Over almost 3,200 rushing yards, though. Recorded the most rushing touchdowns, 47. That's still a ridiculous number. And he's coached 3 different running backs already to 6 all-conference honors, while the backfield has had 5 all-American honors back there. So dealt with a lot of talent, being able to cultivate that talent, get the most out of those guys like Meisinger and the other ones that we've seen in that kind of tandem back there. He's got some good experience. Robert Morris, the head running back coach there, so it's not like this was certainly his first gig. And I would love to get him on here and pick his brain about that Bill Walsh minority internship in the NFL. He went and worked with the Bills for a stint. And we've talked with a few coaches about that. We've talked with Coach Jackson from Valdosta State about that experience. And everyone that I've heard from just speaks volumes about how impactful that's been in their coaching career. I would love to get him on here and kind of pick his brain about that, because that seems to be a common denominator for a lot of these really successful younger coaches taking these big roles.
Absolutely. And you get guys that get even a sniff of NFL experience, and you bring them back down to these levels. And, you know, not that that's a bad thing by any means. People will go wherever they want to coach, but holy cow, like sniffing at the top, bringing that experience down to your level with you.
Yep.
I mean, come on. Like, you can't really beat that.
Yeah. And I should say, too, he's Robert Morris's all-time leading rusher. So the dude doesn't just preach it. Like, he's 100% about it. I would not doubt he still jumps in a drill to show the guys, like, what he's talking about. You know, pen and paper circles and X's and O's type deal. Let me get in and show you the damn thing. I've never been to a Kaiser practice. No tampering right here. But if I were to imagine, I'd say Coach Rush still got it. Come on the show, Coach. Let's get you on here, huh?
Yeah. On a bad day, just goes up to one of the guys running the drills around, just says, "Get out of the way. Let me do this. This is how you do the drill," you know, and screaming the whole time as he's running. That's hey, you know what? If you can do it, might as well, right?
Absolutely. But no, it feels like you said, feels like an obvious hire. It feels like a home run for them. And, you know, they've got a lot of expectations to meet once again next year, but a lot of that's already it's done, right? Like, there's no, you can't just fall off the map if you're a program like that. You still got to make it back into the playoffs and make a run, but they've accomplished the ultimate goal in a very timely fashion in the time span of their program. So in some ways, the expectations are very high because of your past success with the program. But I think in others, you know, it's not like we need to go repeat or the season is a failure, right? You get into the playoffs and you make a competitive run, and under, you know, this head coach, this first-time head coach, and it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah. I think Miles Rice is a guy who's not going to let that let last season, you know, linger at all. He's ready to get to work, you know, and that's what it seems like. That's what it seemed like from his opening interview. And I'm super excited for this Kaiser program moving forward. It's going to be really fun to watch.
Hashtag defend the beach.
Defend the beach, man.
All right, Matt. I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah.
Have a good one. Thanks for hopping on.
Too.
We will we'll stay away from the stadium talk, but we'll get you back on here to talk some more real football. How about that?
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
See you, buddy.